Welcome to the Microsoft Tech Innovators Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Chad Merck, and our guest this week is the CTO of Coursera. But first, let me introduce my co-host for the week. It's Lauren Hutchinson. Lauren, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chad. Hi, I'm Lauren Hutchinson. I'm a cloud and AI platforms infrastructure specialist at Microsoft. I've had the privilege of supporting Coursera on cloud and AI initiatives and witnessing how, under Mustafa's leadership, Coursera is fundamentally changing education, bringing AI-powered, globally accessible learning experiences to millions of people while keeping trust, privacy, and resilience at its core. So very happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and thanks for starting the introduction. I think if you're in the tech or the business world, it is very likely that you've interacted with Coursera, their platform, or maybe pursued a certification through them. We just love having growing companies on the podcast and the people that are leading them. So we are very excited to have Mustafa Furniturewala, Coursera CTO. Mustafa, welcome.
Thanks, Chad. Really great to be here, and thanks for having me on this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mustafa, I know you've spent time at several tech companies, and including Twitter, Citrix, Evernote. But you've been at Coursera now for over a decade in various roles. What about Coursera's mission just made it such a good fit for you?
Yeah, I think, Chad, it goes back to the mission of the company. I really cared about doing something really meaningful in my career when I joined Coursera. And the mission of Coursera was to democratize education, right? And we've since then, aligned on the North Star of doing personalized, scaled, verified learning for millions of learners around the world. And that's the number one thing that keeps me here for as long as I've been. And other than that, I think I'm very fortunate to work with teammates that are really passionate about education and technology and the intersection of the two. So I would say those are the two big reasons why I've been here. I think the other reason is to do with the technology change that's happening around us and how that has evolved over time. So every 2 years, Coursera has been a different company, and there have been different challenges. And the latest has been around generative AI and how disruptive that's been for education and for technology. So, being part of that change has been exciting over the last 11 years.
Absolutely. Well, we're looking forward to exploring more about it. I think that's a good place to start. Lauren, I know you had a question about Coursera's mission.
Yeah, and Mustafa, I know we're going to dig into a lot of that today. So really looking forward to all of those topics that you named. You mentioned the millions of users that use Coursera's platform. Coursera now serves over 191 million learners globally. And for me, this really puts into perspective the impact that Coursera has on the world. It's just incredible. What are Coursera's top strategic priorities today as you scale this mission?
Yeah, so our North Star starts with a place where the world's learners can master skills and grow their careers. So that's where the North Star starts. And what that means is, we want to make sure that as the world around us changes, right? So again, just to reiterate the last point I mentioned around how generative AI has caused so much change around us and has required us to reskill and upskill constantly on these technology shifts. I think just making sure that we as a platform are enabling our learners and being there to serve our learners and our partners who are going through the shift as well, because we have to remember that Coursera is a two-sided marketplace, and so one of the key things that happens here when these shifts happen is there is both technology shifts on the educator side and on the learner side, and enabling both our educators and our learners to go through these technology shifts, and then primarily being learner first, right? Like, how do we really help our learners master skills and grow their careers? Is where we serve all our millions of learners.
Oh, no, definitely. That's super interesting. And would you say that this North Star has contributed significantly to the tremendous growth over the years?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the North Star of wanting to upskill these learners means that, it takes different trajectories, right? And we have various kinds of, segments of learners that we have. We have career starters, we have career switchers, we have career advancers, right? And so being able to serve all these different learners is super important. Whether you're coming in to switch from a data scientist to a software engineer, or you're trying to advance in your current role and growing that, right? Or even there is within your current role, you might have to learn new skills to keep up with what you need to do in your current role, right? So there are all these segments of learners that need upskilling and reskilling. That's important. And then the other aspect of it is, there is different ways of learning, right? Like I'm a very curious person by nature, and so I'm constantly learning. I take many different courses. Like I took one on cryptography this last month, even though it's not really needed for my job. So we have a lot of curious learners. Then we have personal things that you might be learning. We have a course on well-being that's really popular as well, right? So there are those kind of courses. But then we also see a lot of growth from enterprises, right? Because learning in the flow of work, learning how to use the tools at work is also very important. So we've also grown, Lauren, in these different aspects of like consumer and enterprise. And then, as you keep learning, there is the concept of stackable credentials. So learning never stops, right? And we believe in lifelong learning. We believe in continuing to, hone your skills and master your skills. So as you learn and as you grow, you kind of build that stack of credentials, right? You might start from a video and you might learn a skill. And once you learn a bunch of skills, you might get a certificate. And once you get a bunch of certificates, you might get a degree, right? So learning is continuous, learning is lifelong. And so that's been part of the growth journey as well.
I love that. The learning never stops. I think that's a good point into our next topic here and talking about the culture at Coursera, Chad.
Yeah, no, the lifelong learners. I think that I've heard you talk a lot too about having a culture of experimentation at Coursera. What does that mean for your team?
Yeah, so we invest a lot in innovation, right? And when we talk about innovation, the first thing you want to do is start with a culture of experimentation, a culture of like being able to and what does experimentation mean, right? Experimentation means that you can try a bunch of things very quickly and get the right signals and then move and make decisions based on that. It also means in some cases failing fast, right? I'm sure you've heard of like a one-way door and a two-way door where like, there are decisions where when it's a two-way door, you can just, ship that. And if it doesn't work, then, roll that back, right? So enabling a culture of experimentation enables a culture of innovation, right? And so that's why we invest a lot in enabling that culture of experimentation. And now I think that also goes with, there are some basic things you do there with like just making sure you have the right tooling, making sure you have the right culture of, when to experiment, when not to experiment, when to make like, thoughtful decisions, when to move fast, having that right culture. And then in some cases, it's also about setting the right expectations at the right time, right? With generative AI, for example, we've set an expectation that the most important thing right now is adoption to drive to experiment with generative AI, because we actually don't know exactly which output metric will move with generative AI, right? So the key thing for the organization right now is to learn, to adopt, and to engage with the tools. And so it's also important to strike the right balance there on what stage you are in any technology journey.
And I think you mentioned on the tooling front, you've seen a tremendous increase, something from like 30% adoption to almost near universal adoption of AI tooling internally in the organization. Is that through this kind of encouraging experimentation and allowing people to fail and learn in the process?
Yeah, exactly right. I think we focus on driving adoption, and so we want to just make sure that is everyone enabled with the right tools and the tech stack, right? So for different workflows, the way we look at this generative AI adoption culture and experimentation culture is to make sure that for each role, we look at the different workflows, right? So for software engineers, do you have the right tools? And, do you have GitHub Copilot set up in the right way? Do you have Cloud Code set up in the right way, right? For product managers, like what are the workflows? They're writing PRDs. Do you have the tools set up to help them, right? For the sales team, they're making sales calls. Do you have tools for that use case? So we really look at it by function. How do we enable each of these functions with the right tools? And then, really, really give them access. So that's, by workflow. And then there is like the generic thought partners use case, which is, either ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot. What are those like very generic tools that you need? And then also another thing we do that's really helpful is to have certain experimentation budgets for organizations, right? Because you want to remove the sort of procurement and process headache that often comes in the way when you're trying to adopt these tools. And so just enabling people to try different things and having some experiment budget and then share those learnings back, right, is important as well, is something we do a lot. So yeah, it really comes down to a culture of enablement. And then, we make sure that we have we're tracking well on adoption and enablement, which is the most important thing for me.
Yeah, I love the budget for experimentation. Yeah, you probably that's great. And we talked a little bit about AI, your internal adoption, but like let's a little broader, just AI in the education space. You guys shared that you're seeing 14 enrollments per minute for generative AI content in 2025. Is there ever, and I know you've gone through a lot of iterations, you've gone through the whole move to remote learning, and just there's been a lot of things, like you mentioned, every 2 years, it's like running a different company. But have you ever seen another topic generate this much interest? I know a lot of people talk about, there's a lot of hype in AI, but there's obviously some very real interest when you're getting those kind of numbers per minute.
Yeah, that's right, Chad. So we're seeing, as you mentioned, 14 enrollments per minute in 2025, up from 8 in 2024. And Gen AI is the most in-demand skill that we've seen in Coursera's history. There have been others, to your point. There is technology shifts and changes that are constantly happening. So one of the few previous examples in the industry at large is like mobile, cloud were two big ones that I remember. There's also been, there was more recently a big upward trend around skills for data analytics, cybersecurity, project management. So it's a combination of AI and the other skills as well. But yeah, generative AI skill has been sort of the highest demand that we've seen in the history. And also, I'll also add that we haven't seen that some of the fundamental skills demand has gone away. Yes, Gen AI skill is in demand a lot, but so is cybersecurity, so is data foundations. And the reason that happens is, even as an engineer, yes, generative AI skill for me is important, but it's also important for me to still understand the fundamentals, because to be able to use these AI models in the right way, you still need those domain skills. You still need those foundation skills. In fact, it like magnifies the impact of AI if you are a domain expert, right? So we've also seen that some of those, core fundamental skills like cybersecurity, data analytics are still in demand apart from generative AI.
Yeah, absolutely. We focus a lot in Microsoft on the technology aspects, but realizing, I think the AI skilling is so important for the workforce right now. It's a fundamental shift in the way we go about our jobs. How do you advise if learners come to you or someone's getting started? How do you advise them to get started with looking to skill up in this space?
In generative AI, I think the best way, the very short answer on how to learn is by using some of these tools, right? Because I think the concept of learning by doing is very apt in case of generative AI. So that's would be my number one advice or suggestion on how to upskill on these. And the way we do that in the Coursera platform is through a lot of hands-on learning and engaging learning, right? So we have role play and coach as a way to interact with a LLM within a course, or you can take an assessment that's a role play kind of an assessment within a course. So so that would be very relevant in this case, because one of the reasons learning by doing is so important in this case is also because this technology is moving so quickly, right? Like every day we see, not every day, but probably every 2-3 days, we see like a new launch. I'm sure like you've seen like every week now there is a new model that's launching by one of the foundation companies. So the pace of change is so fast that the only way to keep up is by really being hands-on and learning, right?
Yeah.
And that's why, yeah.
You don't have to tell Lauren and I. We live it. I mean, I feel like if you take a week off, you come back and you're like, what happened? Yeah, it's a whole different landscape. It's very dynamic. But Lauren, I'll turn it over to you for a question on education.
Yeah, definitely. I want to get into Coursera Coach because you brought it up, but I'll put a pin in that for a second and just talk about the shift in the industry that we're seeing. But yeah, the education industry, it's undergoing one of the most significant transformations in decades. We've touched on that a lot so far in this podcast. I'm sure you're seeing it with your experience in the industry and with the enrollments in AI. A lot of this probably driven by technology, shifting workforce needs, global access challenges. And against the backdrop of all of this, Coursera has become a major player. What role do you see Coursera playing in the changing education landscape?
Yeah, so Lauren, that's a great question, and I think one of the key things we did soon after ChatGPT launched in 2022 is we've been heads down on launching a lot of generative AI products and expanded our offerings in Coursera. And the reason for that is, when ChatGPT launched, we knew that this is a fundamental shift on how learning will happen going forward, right? And that we need to embrace it really, really early. So we started investing in these areas right away, and we wanted to make sure we have the right balance, right? Because the intuition here can be that, okay, like how do we prevent cheating in exams, right? Like as an example, and yes, we've invested in academic integrity quite a bit, but the more important part here is how do you innovate on how learning changes, right? Because maybe doing the formative quizzes or just watching videos is not going to be how you actually absorb information, and how learning is personalized to an individual changes fundamentally, right? So I know you wanted to get into Coach later, but I'll just mention 3 things that we've built over the last few years as we've embraced generative AI. One is around like Coach role play and that playing a role in the learning experience, right? So we've seen that adoption go up, and we've partnered with Microsoft a lot on that effort. The second is for educators. Like I mentioned, this is a two-sided marketplace, and so educators using Course Builder. And Course Builder is an agentic way to create a course. So it simplifies course authoring and course creation, by a lot. And for educators, academic integrity is still important. So we've also invested in like how do you prevent cheating in some cases, and how do you have the right proctoring tools for our educators. And then lastly, for organizations, right, we've launched things like skills tracks and learning paths to really, really hyper personalize the experience towards each organization, right? So again, going back to what I was talking about, each function will have its own skills track, its own learning path, and there'll be a generic, generative AI foundations thing that everyone needs to learn. But then there are workflows in each skills track and each function that we personalized for all organizations. So that's how we've embraced generative AI and try to make sure that, again, it goes back to being learner first. How do we enable our learners in this time of fast transformation?
Yeah, and that personalization is just so important. You've said it before, but each person learns differently, and I just love how Coursera has really focused on that. the investments that you've been making have really been paying off. I have to just mention Coursera Coach recently won Newsweek's AI Impact Award, which is incredible. Congratulations. 34 million interactions across 2.4 million learners in 26 languages. So some big numbers there. Congratulations. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired Coursera Coach and what you've learned from its rollout?
Yeah, so I'll start with what we've learned from the rollout, and then go back towards like what inspired Coach and how we thought about it. I think what we've learned is the impact has been, as you mentioned, many Coach interactions, but about 94% percentage of learners have said they've had a great experience. So the NPS scores are really high. And what inspired Coach is really when we started with figuring out a generative AI strategy. There were a few aspects to it, right? Like one is the academic integrity thing on like how do you prevent cheating. One is around like, okay, what is the underlying platform here? And that ended up being called Coach, right? What is something that goes throughout the experience and helps the learner throughout the course? And that sort of became a platform experience that was Coach. And then the last piece of it was like, how do we innovate on learning itself? Like, how does like learning fundamentally change? And that's where role play and dialogue comes in. With Coach, we had a few tenets that we care about quite a bit, right? The first thing, which I just mentioned, is having it be a platform, right? So Coach helps you in a course when you have a question, when you want to raise a hand and ask a question to Coach, right? But it might also show up when you are about to take an assessment and help you prepare for that assessment. Or if you fail an assessment, to go back and review your work, right? So, or, we also have auto grading using AI. And so Coach will help you like grade your assessment as well. It's really a platform wide effort. It started with a chat interface on the side of the course, but it's really evolved to this like platform, and that was the vision from the beginning. So that was the inspiration behind Coach. Is number one is being a platform. The second thing we really cared about, which worked really well, and that's why I think we've seen that 94% satisfaction rate, is we care about the authenticity of our instructors and the credibility of our platform, right? So, and knowing that LLMs can hallucinate, we put a lot of effort and guardrails around making sure that we are grounding the answers of Coach that are relevant to the content of the course, right? So we spent a lot, we did evals, we did, made sure that the prompts are working in the right way. We made sure that we're showing Coach in the right context for the learner, so that they're not confused about like what to ask Coach. So we were very intentional in grounding Coach with the right context, and that I think helped with the satisfaction ratings as well. And then lastly, I think we were intentional about having Coach be something that's in the flow of learning versus a separate thing that you do, right? And that was very important as well, because we didn't want to have like two surfaces of learning. So you go to Coach and you come to the course, right? So by in the flow of learning, I mean, when you take an assessment, you get a grade, and then that's where Coach shows up, right? Very naturally. And so just making sure that that experience is in the flow of learning was critical.
That's great. It's great to hear the feedback you've gotten from learners, and just the way you've kind of inserted Coach to nudge people. I was going to say prompt people, but then I was bringing up prompting. I was trying not to be but nudge people at the right moment in time.
Yeah.
You mentioned I heard it in the beginning when Lauren mentioned the 26 different languages, and I think that's one of the least talked about impacts of AI is in terms of language. And you guys are using auto translation and localized experiences to get through language barriers and globalize the impact. How has that experience been as you've expanded into other countries? And I know it's part of your overall mission to democratize education.
Yeah, it's a huge part of democratizing education. I think one of the fundamental things that with personalization that is important is every single person, there is always there's a piece of content, and every single person will absorb that piece of content in a different way, right? I'll bring up an example of like how I was teaching my kids just a couple of days ago, and they had to learn some Roman literature, a book on Roman literature, and I used AI to create a story on Roman literature with an engaging voice, so that he's able to grasp that knowledge very quickly, right? And so that's just an example of how this technology can help really personalize something that every person has a different way of like engaging with content. So going back to your question on translations, yes, like I think this has been a huge unlock for us in two ways. One is the cost has gone down significantly in terms of translating this content. And initially, we were talking in millions of dollars, and to be able to like translate at the scale we do, and that there was a magnitude difference in how that cost came down. The second was the scale at which we were able to do it as well, right, without human intervention. And so that enabled us to very quickly translate a lot of content, right? And the third is just some of the technology enablement here has enabled us to also do things like AI dubbing with lip sync, right? So that means that not just the text content is translated, but the audio and the videos is also translated to make the entire experience very holistic. For we have about, I believe, 26 languages that we've translated into, so that we are able to do that at lower cost, high scale, with like really good quality. And again, like with lip sync and AI dubbing, we're able to also preserve the authenticity of our instructors, which we care about a lot. So yes, this is unlocked a lot of learners in many different countries to be able to engage with our content. To your point, helping us with the democratizing of education.
Awesome. Well, and a little bit about just your overall ecosystem and partnerships. A few more numbers. You guys have 375 plus institutions that you work with, over 12,000 courses. I think about a little over 2,000 of those are AI today, but there's also a Microsoft partnership as well, which we're excited about for some entry-level certificates and scholarships. How in general do you guys think about partnerships as part of your strategy, as you bring this platform to your learners?
Yeah, I think educators and partners have been a critical part of our journey and continue to be so. I think there's at a fundamental level, they play a big role in from partners like Microsoft in understanding what skills are in demand in the workplace, and then bringing those skills into the content that we need for our learners. So I think they play a huge role in enabling that. And then the other aspect is, our educators also bring in a lot of great pedagogy practices in being able to teach that content in the right way, right? So partners are extremely critical in terms of enabling this learning. And even when we talk about personalization, the way we also want to personalize to the educator, right? Like bringing in the voice of the educator, bringing in that authenticity that I was talking about is also important. Just in terms of some numbers, even with the Microsoft partnership that we've had since April 2021, I believe, we've had over 1 million learners in more than 100 countries take content from the Microsoft partnership alone. And then we've also focused a lot on making that content accessible. We've had a partnership where Microsoft will award about 5,000 plus scholarships for Microsoft programs in the effort around women in cloud. So we're really proud to partner with Microsoft on those initiatives so that it's accessible to more and more learners across the world.
Yeah, we love it. It fits very well into our mission as well. I think we just have a few more questions. Don't want to get out of here without asking a little bit about your perspective on kind of the future of learning. I was going to ask you what you saw the landscape in 5 to 10 years, but it feels like since it changes every 2 years, maybe I should ask what are we in store for in 2 years? Maybe it's too hard to look that far out these days, but.
Yeah, you're right. I think 5 years is probably harder to predict with the pace of change you're seeing. So yeah, I think we are delivering a lot of bold innovation with new products like Skills Tracks, which is skills tracks for organizations within each function, role play, and within role play, we want to enable different modalities. We've started with text-based role plays, where you can do a role play on a sales call, for example. We are soon going to bring in audio modality there, and then even video, right? We are continuing to invest in Course Builder so that we can create engaging content on the fly with AI, right? So you can think of having a lot of content in a library and being able to create these role plays and create these hands-on learning assessments with AI. And suddenly that course becomes very engaging, and not just engaging, you can also personalize, right? To the earlier point I made on the delivery of the content can be personalized. We are also partnering with OpenAI to bring in Coursera into ChatGPT, turning the curiosity that into learning moments that people have on platforms like ChatGPT and other ChatGPT-like experiences. So yeah, I think the innovation is going to continue around making learning more accessible and more personalized for all our learners. And if I were to summarize, I think it'll become more multimodal um, and more hyper personalized to the learners.
Yeah, you mentioned AI chatbots. They're obviously a new way in for things like search, but it seems like you see it as a new channel for learning as well, as a starting point for learners.
Absolutely, yeah. I think if you even look at some of the data around ChatGPT usage, or just LLM usage broadly, education is one of the top things that users of generative AI are using it for. And when they are doing that, I think being able to go deeper into a topic and leaning on that curiosity to change that curiosity into learning, right, is super important. So yes, absolutely, and it goes back to the comment on learning in the flow as well, in the flow of work as well, right? And you might go into a learning moment from a conversation with an LLM, or you might be doing a workflow or something on your job, right, that you need to finish, and using a learning moment in the flow of work is also going to be important. So just as an example, right, like if I need to uh, let's say prepare for one of my offsites, right? There are several aspects of that, which is like, okay, planning for the offsite, creating a deck. There are many things in that moment where I might be able to use generative AI effectively as assisting me in those tasks. So I think learning in the flow of work is going to be super important as well.
So thank you for these insights. One thing that I do want to touch upon what you said, I know one of the missions is really making it accessible. And in light of that, I'm curious, how is Coursera thinking about tackling challenges like low connectivity regions? Because I can imagine that's probably a tough space. And so how are y'all thinking about that? And then maybe some other challenges like potentially low completion rates and maybe anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah, so I think with low connectivity rates, maybe there's a couple of ways that we are tackling that. One is that we do have a mobile app that has offline, and offline is a huge feature that a lot of our learners use. So we want to continue to both like have features like offline and reduce the bandwidth requirements for using the platform, right? So that helps in low connectivity areas. Another aspects that is propping up is being able to use local LLMs, right? So there is in some of the browsers now, as you download the browser, it actually comes with like a mini LLM embedded into the browser that you can use even when you're offline. And that LLM has a lot of capabilities in terms of learning as well, right? So we want to leverage that. And going back to the translations conversation that we were having, actually, some of these local models are able to even do translations, right? So, and that would happen at like zero cost, other than the cost of using the CPU in your local machine. So, yeah, so we want to leverage some of these advances in local LLMs as well to enable learning in a low connectivity area.
So interesting. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much, Mustafa. Yeah, I think in general, you touch on a lot of themes of curiosity. We talk a lot about it in Microsoft, unlocking human ambition. And I do think, sometimes we focused on some of the potential negatives, but there's so much opportunity if you are curious and if you are looking to learn. The access, it's never been greater right now. So there's a lot of opportunity here, and you guys are at the forefront of that. And so we're excited to see where you go as Coursera continues to augment the traditional education path and help with people adding skills. It's a pretty exciting time. Like I said, would love to see where you're at in 2 years as well. We really do appreciate you sharing all your insights on AI education and innovation. So anything else you want to add, Mustafa, or we can let you go? Thank you so much.
No, I would say that, I completely agree with you, Chad. And I don't think we would be able to do this without partners like Microsoft. So, I'm very thankful for partnerships like Microsoft to enable us to meet our mission of, enabling learners to continue to thrive in this world.
Well, thank you so much. And Lauren and I would encourage everyone listening to check out Coursera's AI-powered learning experience and stay tuned for more episodes of the Microsoft Tech Innovators Spotlight. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mustafa. We really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks for listening to the Microsoft Tech Innovators Spotlight podcast. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to stay connected for more episodes where we continue to uncover the stories that are shaping the future of AI and technology.